Welcome to Overseasoned.
It's only going to take one take.
I actually kicked him out of the restaurant.
Why?
Gotta bitch to someone.
Gotta bitch to somebody, and I'm good to bitch to.
I thought you were from Spain.
Yes, I am.
Oh.
Sí soy.
Gotcha.
Soy chorizo.
Oh, no.
You've gone into Martha Stewart land.
It's good. It's just not live.
Whatever.
Okay.
It's like a scene from Cocoon. Like the sun goes down.
You don't want to get blacklisted.
You know what, Mr. President? Is this what you want? 3, 2.
It's another exciting day
Isn't it always?
in Manila, Philippines. And actually, we're in a certain part of Manila now called Pasig at the Pod Network Entertainment. And we're being anchored by our wonderful friend, Ivan, the producer. Thanks for having our back today. It's a beautiful podcast studio.
Really nice.
It's so we're going to try and be, a little bit more organized, a little more mise en place today.
Are we?
For this.
On a Sunday. Imagine
Well, it's
that.
actually Monday.
Is it?
Sunday in the U.S., Monday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm still messed up.
Whatever, who cares?
Yep.
It's Sunday in the U.S., though. And
I try not to get too much into, I try not to.
what day it actually is?
Well, yeah, and I try not to, get on the Manila schedule too much, because by the time you get acclimated, you're on your way back, and you got to do the whole thing all
You're
over
literally
again.
leaving. You're leaving today.
Yes, tonight at midnight. So I'm gonna have to
Get back to the back.
Yeah. So when I'm tired, I sleep, but I don't know what day it is.
Yeah.
Barely.
I don't know
Just
what day
gonna
it is
keep
either.
going, keep running.
It's actually,
But it is Monday. Sunday back home.
coming to Asia to be with our team is essentially the same as being in a restaurant because you forget what day it is.
True.
You forget where you are. You forget everything.
Yeah.
So good. I'm glad that this could put us back in a mindset.
Last night when I was eating though, I realized I grabbed my spoon instead of my knife, so I was eating with a spoon and a fork. I'm like,
An honorary
I'm becoming
Filipino.
an honorary Filipino.
I love it. That's
Takes
the way
about
it should
7
be.
days, then it just starts to bleed in.
I 100% agree. I love being Filipino. Honorary. I think we got it ordained by Jollibee.
True.
Like last week, was it?
Yeah.
Jollibee gave me a little baby Jollibee. I have to show everybody. Oh, but this baby Jollibee is actually going to go to
It's
Xander.
in my luggage.
It's
That's
in
right.
your luggage. Hope Xander loves it. Maybe in the future, if Xander lives in Manila, we'll know why. But so interesting enough, the only reason I know it was Sunday is because I'll use Sunday to kind of veg out and scroll a little bit. And I saw a really interesting topic of conversation by an old friend of ours who used to work at the Alta Marea Group, an old customer, Matt Adler. He's a chef.
Okay.
And
Where do you work at the?
I think
That's
he
going
worked at
back.
Marini and a couple other restaurants, but he's got his own restaurant, and I forget what it's called.
The name is super familiar.
He's a super nice guy, and he's got a restaurant down in D.C. I can actually look it up, but he's really good at posting pretty provocative content online.
On which?
On Facebook, and I think he's on almost every platform. Let me look him up real quick. His name is Matt Adler. He's a great chef. He's down in D.C. And let's see here. His restaurant is called Caruso's Grocery. And if you want to check him out, his Instagram is at Adler81, Adler 81. And he's really good at posting content that gets engagement. It's usually about questions like what we like to ask. And in this case, he brought up a topic that I think is often debated, has never necessarily been finalized.
Are they ever?
I think today we're going to, Tony.
All right. Do you think we're going to be on opposing ends of this debate?
I think we may. I'm not sure. It just depends on, your perspective. We'll see where we end
All
up.
right.
But the topic was, what area of the restaurant has it harder? The front of the house or the back of the house?
Here we go.
Look, I think you're already defeated. And I think I see it in your eyes, right?
Defeated?
Defeated. And you know what?
Wait.
Here's the thing.
What defeated in what way?
I could just tell. I could just tell that
Tell that what?
I can tell that you are already conceding defeat. And you know,
I'm not conceding defeat. I think it's one of these. I'm exhausted by the question. I'm just exhausted.
You're already tired.
Yes.
I'm so sorry,
Yeah.
Chef. I'm not, and here's why. I always concede to the back of the house, and I've developed this automatic like chefs have it so hard, back of the house has it so hard. But when I actually look back on the physicality, the intenseness of some of the positions I've had, I think to myself, I don't know if the back of the house actually has it worse. I actually think
Worse in what way? The physical aspect?
the physical aspects of the job. Yes.
Can you hear my eyes roll on camera?
Yeah.
On video?
Well, what do you think? You guys have
On
it worse?
sound, I mean.
Okay. So let me
What are you
tell
gonna
you.
do? Stack wine boxes?
No,
Like-
I am going to.
Because you
I am-
usually get the kitchen to come help you get the wine deliveries. That was always my.
Oh, really?
Yeah, up and down the
Sounds
stairs.
like
up and down the stairs.
Sounds like a master som, because I never would have asked the back of the house to help me. And
Just
since I'm not a
just
master
crowd of
som,
busboys.
since I'm not a master som, nobody wants to help me. You know what I mean? But I'm sure you worked with a master som then, because their back was they were too busy studying.
No,
Tony.
they just show up in an expensive suit, and how can they be?
Well, I get it. I'm sorry. So since I was not an MS, I actually had to work. And before being a som, I actually had very physical jobs. And thinking back on them, I shall start. Let me start with my first incredibly difficult job that I never thought was going to be this tough. Have you ever been a barback?
No.
Bro, there was a restaurant. My first restaurant job ever was at a place called the Olive. It's not there anymore.
In Jersey?
In Jersey. It was in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, in this little area called the Short Hills Plaza. And my mom was friends with the owner. And she wanted me out of the fucking house. And she also didn't necessarily have the means to give me some allowance and stuff. And, you know, the pressures of Cherry Hill, there were definitely some more affluent parts of the town. And all my friends were getting cars and stuff. I had completely, I never had illusions of having a car.
Mm-hmm.
I was just like, okay, you know, at some point I'll make some friends that had cars. Thank you, Sam and John. Thank you for picking me up all the time. I'm sorry. I promise I'll buy you a steak the next time I see you. But, so I never had any illusions of anything, but my mom was like, look, I've got a friend who owns a restaurant. You're going to get a job. So I'm like, all right, whatever, you know what I mean? I'll go get a job. And my first job was as a busboy at this restaurant called The Olive. It was like a Mediterranean spot. And looking back on it, dude, I met some of my dearest friends in this restaurant. A lot of us continued in the industry. And it was kind of like the hot spot of New Jersey, which is like the equivalent of saying, I don't know, I don't know, the fanciest grilled cheese restaurant in, I don't know. It was, you know, it was a beautiful restaurant. But so I started as a busboy. And when you're first learning to coordinate yourself and how to clear tables and how to set tables, and more importantly, like all of the like balance and core strength you need to like lift these big trays and stuff. Like, you know, in at first it's a completely foreign thing. Like you've got to learn, one, how to move in a dining room. Two, I don't know why I thought I was being cute or something, but I bought these, like, I didn't have the right shoes. I had like these, I don't know, like these slip-on black leather, like almost what they'd give you on a flight now in first class. Yeah.
Huh.
Like I don't know what the fuck I was thinking, bro. I think they were just some black shoes that maybe my aunt bought for me.
You just had to wear black shoes, and that's what you
I had to wear black, and that's what I had, right? It was either that or like some really shitty sneakers. and I'm pretty sure I got in trouble for the shitty sneakers. So I was like, this is the next best thing. And I remember my first couple shifts training, it's completely foreign. I mean, like, there's people moving back and forth, and it's fucking intense, right? There's like
You're kind of not really trained.
fish
right?
out of water.
Yeah, you're just supposed to kind of figure it out as you go.
And I remember I'll never forget the first time I dropped an entire tray of glasses. So there was a really sweet server. Her name was Boots. I don't know what her real name was. She was striking. Like, she had this incredible, like, bangs, and she was tall. She must have been in her early 30s or something, but, like, presence, right? And she's like, I'm going to whip you into shape. And, of course, like, you know, I'm, like, 15 years old, and I'm like, okay. Like, it felt like a dominatrix and her, like, first pupil.
God.
Not that I've ever experienced that, but what I imagine, a dominatrix, like, she's like, oh, a young little veal chop. I'm going to pound this motherfucker, right? And she was so kind to me, but she also, like, she instilled this, like, I'm watching you thing.
That's what you need.
And you need that, right? And, dude, she would always make these off comments, like, at pre-shift, like a new server would come in, and she'd be like, this is Xavier. He's learning the ropes, and I'm teaching him. Sometimes he's good, but other times when he's not paying attention, he's really bad. And I'd be like, why are you calling me out like this at pre-shift? Like, made me uncomfortable, but looking back, I probably kind of liked it. Anyway, so that job, right, was like this hip little South Jersey restaurant. And, you know, as you start getting comfortable, like even just carrying like a tray with glasses or setting a table, like you have to like get confidence around moving your body and being in the dining room. And, you know, you got to be careful of guests. You got to be careful of other servers and waitresses and all. And honestly, the way that this restaurant was designed, it was a fucking shit show. It was like this, it was a beautiful restaurant. It was this old house, right? But interestingly enough, dude, now that I think back on it, what a fucking wild shit show of a place this was. You'd walk in, it was a beautiful, big, open, like imagine the living room of like a cottage house. You walk in, it's beautiful. On the right-hand side was this big bar, probably like 30 seats. It had a patio outside with like another, let's call it like 60 seats outside. And then they had this big pizza oven right behind the bar and the dining room, which probably had a good 60 seats in it. And then the line was elevated, like, let's call it 10 steps just above the dining room floor.
Wow.
It made it dramatic and beautiful. And the kitchen was open and it was brand new. So everything was like stainless steel and like very attractive with like this brick oven, pizza oven right next to it. But dude, like now that I think back, and it just dawned on me now, like who the fuck is gonna like design a restaurant where you literally pick up from the line and the first thing you do is turn around and there's a death trap of stairs right there. And then me, I'm a fucking brand new busboy. So in order to clear, you know, like take back any one of the dishes or like, you know.
Did you have to go up the stairs to get to the dish pit too?
Yes.
Oh.
Yes. And now looking back on this, I'm like, no wonder so much like near death experiences I had in this restaurant.
Oriole, where I worked, was in a townhouse too, and everything was upstairs or downstairs. The kitchen was on the top floor, so we had a dining room on the top floor. You could go straight out there, but then the main dining room was actually downstairs. And then the pastry kitchen was in the basement, so they'd have to come upstairs for every single order.
Wait a second. So when you were at Oriole, was there kitchen printers on both sides of it? Because it sounds like the restaurant was in the middle. Like,
it was handwritten dupes.
Are you serious?
Yeah. There was a machine for
like firing checks or something?
No, they would they put the orders into a digital thing for the check. But the dupes that went upstairs in pastry and culinary were just handwritten dupes.
And how would you guys fire stuff? Like how would pastry actually fire dishes from downstairs?
To the kitchen?
like to the dining room? Like say like a dessert course was coming out, or would pastry only prep downstairs?
We wouldn't get like, well, the wait staff will come in and say, fire this table, fire that table. But you could also, sometimes it was so busy, you just take 10 tickets and be like, fire these. Right?
Got it. And would you ever be like a tyrannical chef, or would any of the other chefs be like these? I know how you guys can get. Yeah. And
what
would you like I can only imagine like at the bottom of the steps, waiting for the servers to fuck up a sauce, or like a little cute little flower garnish like accidentally drops off a scallop. Like, would you guys ever like just watch with the eye, like waiting to see how the plates came down once they finally like hit that bottom step and went out to the dining room to deliver?
Sit down there and do that stuff.
Oh, I forgot. Yeah, no, I know.
Come on,
I've heard the stories of the Charlie Palmer Group. I know how you guys used to work. You wouldn't have an extra chef just to like an extra moment just to look around at things.
No,
just getting pounded.
Well, plus you
all the time.
You would have no reason to go down there to check it out. But sometimes it's a dance between the front of the house and the back of the house. So sometimes you see things sitting down there, and it's like, can that go to the table? What's going on? But you got to let them do their thing while you do your thing.
Understood. Well, dude,
I think I might surprise you. I'm not going to say that we have it harder.
Okay.
I'm not going to. I'm going to say, and I used to tell the cooks this, if you would rather do that job, go do it.
Yeah.
If it's so much easier and you make so much more money and et cetera, put in an app. I'm sure you could go do it. I actually worked in the front of the house a few times.
A few times?
Yeah. I wanted to learn about it.
Okay.
So when I was the corporate chef, so I wasn't like working the kitchen full time. I would work in the dining room on like lunches.
No way.
And
in a suit?
Yes.
Get out of here.
Yes, and I was terrible at it. I was so nervous. I couldn't get the table numbers right in my head. I'd like take a couple to the table, and then there'd still be somebody there, and I'd freeze up. I didn't know what to do. So I probably did it 5 or 6 times. And then I'm like, this just is not for me.
Whoa, I didn't know this.
Yeah.
Goodness. Okay, so you did develop a little bit of a respect for the front of the house.
I always had I understand.
I
would always get, when the crowd starts to chatter back and forth about who has it worse.
Yeah. You have an appreciation.
It's all one organism,
It is all one organism. And trust me, look, I have plenty of healthy respect for the back of the house, especially like we'll get into this later. But so my automatic response to this question is always back of the house has it worse. It's hot. There's fucking fryers and ovens opening and sharp ass knives and a bunch of formerly incarcerated people in the back, and like you just never know who you're working next to.
Right,
great people
in the back of the house. You don't have to worry about also maintaining
and here's the thing though,
a proper attire, right?
Well, that's the thing, right? Is you in the back of the house, you can see all the scars, right? You can see the burns and the cuts, and when somebody accidentally over tosses a sauce, and you can see it, right? And you hear it, and it's like all contained in this mayhem. And you can see the battle scars of a shift. Like if somebody has to run and make a quick parsley oil or whatever, like you see the battle scars, right? In the front, we're really trying to maintain, like you said, like the attire, the appearance. So dude, when I worked at this place, The Olive, I started as a busboy. I'll never forget the first time I got too comfortable. I got too confident. Dare I say a little cocky. And I would practice, dude. Like when it was a slow lunch shift, I don't know why this place did lunch. God, the tacos, the owners of this restaurant were super sweet people. But they would, it's like everybody. They want to do everything in the beginning. And I remember we did lunch and brunch, and it was a slow shift. It gave me time to practice. But making $2 an hour to do nothing was definitely trying.
Right,
that was a tough
tips
shift.
to balance it out.
Yeah, there was no money.
I guess you kind of usually do lunch just because you're setting up for dinner anyway. So
it makes sense.
Right.
And
just boring.
it's just boring. It's especially for the front of the house.
And it's harder to run.
I
would
have rather have been peeling shrimp or plucking herbs or whatever they were doing. I would have rather been doing that. But long story short, the first time that I got comfortable carrying like a large banquet tray, I you would load this thing up with a bunch of glassware or used, you want to be able to, when you want to be a good busboy, you have a few different things that you're super focused on. One, when people get up, your number one responsibility is to make sure that table is ready for your section to be sat, right? Because Boots, she's like, listen, honey, you can provide a lot of value for me in a lot of ways, but the most valuable thing you can do for me is make sure my tables are ready as quickly as they get up, right? So a table leaves, they pay their check. First things first, make sure that my money and my check is put in a place that, I can grab it very easily, because I don't want to be chasing you around to find out if somebody paid, if somebody tipped, all that stuff. 2, as soon as, people are finished and you can tell everybody at the table's done, get that stuff out of the way. Whatever you can do to pre-bus and whatever is helpful. So she taught me a lot. I'll never forget Boots. And her name was Boots, dude, because not only was she a striking 5'10", she must have been either Irish or German. Like, she just had this presence to her. But she used to wear these black boots
I was guessing she would
go up to her knees,
obviously.
dude, and they were just like shit stompers. Like it looked like she could easily go to like an old Manchester club end the night and like just rule the dance floor. You know what I mean? She had that presence. She probably did. Except in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. But anyway, so one day I dropped a whole tray. There was like a 20-person table, and I was like, I fucking got this, right? I had been there for a few months, and I was comfortable. I put a tray jack down. I put a tray, and those big oval ones?
Yeah.
So I put a bunch of glassware on there, all the fucking plates. I'm stacking plates. I'm like, I'm the fucking man. I got this, right? I had been like 2 months a busboy or whatever, and like I finally felt comfortable. And, of course, you want to, like, show off in front of the hostesses. They're like, we need this back so bad, right? They had, like, 4 tables together. And I'm like, I got this, right? My first ex-girlfriend was, like, in the dining room. And I'm like, I'll show her how strong I am, right?
Oh, she was sitting down as a guest?
She wasn't sitting down, but she's like, she needs the table because she's getting pressure from all the different
she worked
people.
In the restaurant.
Yeah, she worked in the restaurant.
Okay.
She's getting pressure from all the people that want to sit down. So, of course, I'm like stacking plates and stacking glassware and all the silverware. And, bro, I fucking throw this thing on my shoulder. And I'm like, yeah, like fucking Clark Kent, you know what I mean? And I'm like walking and taking my time, of course, because I'm like, this thing's heavy. I overdid it, obviously. And, bro, I go up the steps, up past the line to start getting into the into the dish pit. And I felt whoa. And, dude.
All the way down the steps.
So what happened was, I had it on my shoulder, and I felt it give a little bit, and then I actually ate it. I fucking was like, no. Because it started to tip this way, and I, like, shimmied the weight into me, and, like, fucking a gallon of water and Coca-Colas and leftover apple martinis and whatever the else was fucking on this tray just spilled on me. And I caught glassware, plates, like here, like in my belly, right? And I'm like, oh my God, dude, that could have been so fucking horrible. And I look back into the dining room. Nobody knows anything, thank God. And I like shimmy up the last couple steps, and I had to like gingerly drop this tray onto the dish pit. And bro, a Mexican saw me and was like, wait, what's up, man? Oh my God. And like he saw that I was like fucking like on the verge, right? Plates, everything. Like, and things are collapsing on me. Like there's flutes and martini glasses and just, bro. And he was so sweet. He helped me unload this thing so nothing would shatter and fall. And bro, I was covered in just sticky shit. I feel like a maraschino cherry like was in here and like a blue cheese olive. Actually, there wasn't blue cheese olives back then, but I was covered. And in that moment, forever, I've always felt uncomfortable carrying large trays.
But you just pulled
ever
it off. I mean, you got messy.
again.
Well, how did you get back? I was expecting something a little bit more catastrophic.
No,
rather than
thankfully,
damaged ego.
dude, well, that's what I'm saying. Looking back on this, like having steps lead up to the line is ridiculous. It's ridiculous for carrying plates. But because, dude, like you literally turn around. There was probably like a 5-foot give. And when they were calling for hands and stuff, like I didn't run food back then because I was just a lowly busboy. But like there's no fucking way that like.
Here's the thing. It's going to happen.
Oh, I'm sure.
It's
I'm
going to
sure some
happen.
people bid it.
I mean, even
I never noticed. I
if
never
there's
got
stairs,
to watch.
It's going to happen
Yes.
at least once a month.
Yes.
Whether you're new or experienced or whatever, there's a butter pat left on the stair or something. We would just hear like a crash when we were expediting, and we'd just pick up that last
what
stick and be
happened?
like, "On the fly."
Redo.
Yeah,
That's really fucking funny.
you'd have to.
Well, dude, I'm gonna let you get into yours in a second, but I didn't even realize that the busboy was easy. I always saw the action behind the bar. It was like this beautiful bar, and of course, like
The busboy is easy compared to the bar back, you're saying?
bro, the bar back.
Did you move into the bar back room?
So that's what I thought I wanted. I saw this. There was this kid, Phil Saunders. I'll never forget him.
Your recall with names is amazing.
Thanks, bro.
I just have to
Yeah.
applaud you.
I didn't study in school, so I had to retain something. So I saw this guy. He was like a couple years older than me. I was like I think I was a sophomore or a junior in high school. And Phil was like a senior, right? And he had like blonde hair, and he was like this. He just looked like a strapping fucking surfer dude. Blonde hair, all the chicks loved him. He was yoked for like 17 or 18. This guy had like fucking traps, dude. He just looked like, and I would always see him like, dude, that guy's the man. And he would run back and forth. And honestly, like when I was a busser, like I really wasn't allowed to touch anything. I was just a grunt for the servers and the hosts and everybody who just needed things, right? And I remember just being so like the limitations and wanting to go behind the bar. Rule number 1 is you are not fucking allowed behind the bar. Not for anything. You do not go back there, right? And then you don't touch or look at or interact with the line. You do not touch it, right? Your job is to clear tables and do what the servers tell you to do. And one day, I don't know if Phil was like out or something, but they're like, hey, do you want to help with bar backing tonight? We're super busy and we need help. And I was like, this is my fucking chance. Hell yeah, right? I had no idea what I just signed up for. Dude, so the first thing the bartender says to me is like, anything I tell you to do for the rest of the evening, you do it the moment I ask you to do it, right? And I'm like, got it. And he's like, your job is to make sure I have beer, I have clean glassware, and I have ice. And he's like, and if tonight goes well, that's the only things you'll be doing tonight. Don't fucking talk to anybody. Don't look at anybody. And I'm like, I got this. I'm like, glassware, ice, beer. Bro, I had no idea what I signed up for. So number 1, there was not an ice machine behind this bar.
Oh.
Who designed this place? So there was an ice
That's
machine
pretty common, too.
downstairs.
That's pretty, you know.
Well, and then they would have, so
Because you don't want the noise happening in the restaurant, right? So you'd have to like.
definitely is space limitations and all
Yeah.
kinds of stuff, right? Bro, so downstairs, there was an ice machine that had like, you know, one of these big Hoshizakis or whatever. And they had one trash can labeled bar that was for ice. And everyone knew that's just for the bar.
For like health.
Yes, for health code reasons and all that stuff, right? So the first thing they go is like, all right, go fill the ice. And bro, I filled a trash pail with ice. And I was like, okay.
Thinking you could move it.
Dude, this thing was like 100 pounds. And I'm like, what the fuck, right? So that was the first one and so I like fill it up, and I thought I was going to throw it over my shoulder like Phil does, because he's the man and I'm the man too, right? I am not the fucking man. I am a little bitch, dude. I fucking had to like drag this thing up each step. Dude, Phil would throw one on his fucking arm like a hero. And in that moment, I'm
You're
like,
exhausted. I'm half an hour
dude,
into the
first one. I'm like, what? So I go and dump the ice, and I'm like, all right, cool. What next? And they're like, dude, there's 6 wells. So then I had to fill every one of these wells with ice.
by
And
opening,
each of them,
right?
yes, and each of them had like 2 whole fucking dumps that I had to do. So, dude, for like an hour, I'm just getting ice. And then you have to replenish the ice.
Of course. Because it's melting there. It's not.
Dude, so just the ice, I think, I never wanted to bar back again, but just the ice. I started doing bus tubs because I couldn't do it.
Right.
I'm not Phil.
But then you have to make 2 or 3 times as many trips.
Yeah, but I'm like, fuck that.
No, of course.
Right? So there's step one.
It's just as exhausting in a way. Just have to do it over time.
Incredible, these people, dude. Incredible. And so that was the first thing. The second thing was beer. So getting cases of beer, again, the walk-in is downstairs. Up and down and up and down. And bro, they didn't have draft beer. It was just bottled beer. So that by itself was just like this monumental feat, because if I only did 1 case of beer at a time, they hazed me. They're like, what are you doing, you weakling? You can't be a barback. And I'm like, okay, I'll do 2. 1 Red Stripe, 1 Bud Light. They're like, what are you doing, just 2? They're like, you need to do 3 or you're never doing this again. And then, of course, it becomes this game of like,
Right.
I'll prove to you. Bro, and then you're coming up and down the steps, and I can't see. Because with 3 beers stacked, you're going up and down these steps, and I can't even see where I'm going, bro. I still have nightmares of bar backing at the Olive. And we haven't even touched on the fact that they're asking you, because people eat at the bar and stuff, they're filling, dude, bartenders are just busy, and they're like filling the fucking bus tubs with shit, like
Well, plus you
bread baskets
all
and-
these beer bottles, you eventually have to take back out as garbage, right?
that is correct.
So you're doing
and then
it
on
twice.
top of that, you got all these bus tubs of food. Bro, I got my fucking ass kicked. And I remember my back was just like, I'm 16 years old and my back's on fire. And I'm like, no wonder they call it a bar back. Like, you gonna give up your back
Did you
for
do it
this?
again?
Never again.
That was it.
They asked me. And, dude, I thought it was going to be glamorous. I thought I was going to look cool. Because, dude, all like,
Well, eventually, it just takes a few months for you to get in the groove of it, you know?
bro, never again. Bar backing at the Olive and at any busy bar is honestly, it's a physical feat. It is a job of focus. It is a job of intense manual labor. And honestly, you have to give up the body in order to set up your team for success. And I never understood,
Give up the body?
like you can grab 1 case of beer at a time,
Right.
but you just tripled your workload.
Yep.
You can grab a bus tub of ice, but you just 6-tupled your workload. It was insane.
Mine has a lot to do, it's similar lines of like the physical labor part.
Yeah.
For me, offsite catering was always the most difficult thing, because you're just loading stuff up in and out, and
Yeah.
you're always making adjustments.
Yes.
It rains and you have to move everything under a tent, or the oven's over here, but this is over here. It was always this monumental logistical operation.
And
to
then you
do
got to
a
worry about
buffet.
keeping things cold, keeping things warm. And
Yeah, we used to do these dinners for in LA for like wrap parties or things like that for our catering venture down there.
Rap parties?
Yeah, or
Like-
like after the
Like
award
album
shows.
releases and stuff like this?
Right, or after like huge parties for after the award shows, and
Whoa,
things like that.
yeah.
And it would be months of.
Right now, everybody, by the way, in the world that's listening to this is saying, like, who? And you probably don't remember because you're a Joy Division guy.
No, I remember seeing a lot of stars.
Yeah?
Yeah, because they'd all be there walking around while I'm scurrying between different hotlines trying to make sure that the lamb was not
Seared.
overcooking. Right. And again, you're covering these incredible distances.
Yes.
The kitchen's upstairs on a third level or something like that you're running like beef back and forth to these different lines
Yeah.
of torture, right? So you're just running all day long from 6 a.m. till whatever, midnight.
And nobody was nice enough to say, hey, it's just cold hors d'oeuvres today. Of course
Well,
not.
I remember getting into to long discussions about when to put the dressing on the salad because you can't have it overdressed. It can't sit there.
Right. Can't
there-
wilt.
There's 500 salads that you're pre-plating onto a table. Then you have to have 6 people go by with 2 little things of dressing and do it 10 minutes before people are supposed to show up. So that was always a really difficult aspect of food service in general, I thought.
The
was
off-site catering.
The hardest catering job I ever had to do, besides those, which were just logistically just intense. Like so much work for a bunch of Hollywood actors who didn't spend a lot of time eating anyway. Like,
Fair.
right?
Yeah, but the person throwing the party needed you to know this was like a like a Michelin dinner for right. Like,
it's not like
meanwhile they're just
loading up
doing
the plate.
blow in the bathroom and like having one little nibble of lamb chop and throwing it.
Right. I wish I could remember how much food was actually left over from these
I
things. I
know.
mean, sure, there was hundreds of people there. We went through it, but
Yeah.
I'm not sure if the care and attention and detail you put into the food mattered that much as opposed to just getting it up and out. I mean, I'd be poaching shrimp in like these massive.
On site?
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, it was a catering kitchen.
So when you would do, it was a catering. Okay, so but when you would do these big events, let's say it's like a post Academy Awards dinner, would you scope out this kitchen at all before the event?
It was the standard kitchen. It was our kitchen, a part of the restaurant group, and there'd just be.
Oh.
And the event actually would take place on the premises, like outside of it, on this huge courtyard they had. So it wouldn't be that far away. It would be the kitchen that we owned or operated would be very close to the actual
Okay, got
event.
it. Okay.
But you're still just running, and I know it's upstairs, so you're kind of constantly going back and
Up
forth,
and down
trying
and
to
back
like
and forth.
time things right so that the beef wasn't overcooked. It was just a lot.
I
was
used
a
to
lot.
hate off-site catering.
Well, I guess that wasn't quite off-site, but it was a huge production of
Got it.
catering. The
Got it.
hardest one I ever had to do was a partner in the restaurant. His daughter was getting married.
Oh, the old investor dinner.
Yeah, and asked us, of course, to do the reception.
Okay.
What's it called? The day before the wedding, the practice.
Oh, like
wedding?
the family dinner or
Yeah.
whatever. Yeah, whatever.
So we had 2 events out in Long Island that we had to
Okay.
cater for.
Got it.
And we had a catering operation in New York too, so it worked. But again, logistically very difficult because you're driving trucks of stuff out and making sure you
Oh
have
my God.
enough
No
food.
wonder
And
it's
it was
so
a
expensive.
It was a big event. It was
Do you remember how many people? 100?
more than that.
More than 100.
I mean, the practice dinner, whatever it's called, was easily 200, and I think the
What?
400. Yeah.
Holy fuck.
And I think it rained, if not the first day, but definitely rained all day the second day.
So you guys catered both events.
Yes, and we didn't go back. We couldn't go back. We had to pack everything up.
Oh, so
both.
you were stuck in Long Island overnight.
Yeah, we stayed in a hotel and had a refrigerated truck and all that jazz.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a fucking ordeal.
And once I remember driving around trying to find the hotel from the first event to the second event, and the roads were very curvy and uphill and downhill, and we could hear the stuff in the back of the
Like
kitchen.
clanging and
We had it like bungeed all together, but still, like stuff was falling all over the place. You have to
Shit.
stop and push it back up and
Oh, you
retighten
like
it.
take a left turn. You're like, oh shit.
That event, and then the next day, the wedding, it rained all day.
Fuck.
So, and we're slowly kind of you're kind of gotta have to you have to cook way more than you need, right? You can't just cook enough for 400 people because
Whoa.
there's 3
Shit
different
happens.
hot lines and 3 different cold lines, and things happen. But you have to make everything look full,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And I didn't quite put that together in my brain.
Sure.
So the 3 different hot sections started to like deplete and look
No.
like not as bountiful as they should have looked.
Oh, because they were tables of like.
Well, there were like hotline, like a buffet.
Okay. Yeah.
But I
yeah.
was supposed to keep 3 full, not 2 or 1, right?
Oh.
So you'd have these different people going around to these different lines, and I couldn't fill them up as much as the
Oh,
night wore on.
shit.
So that was embarrassing.
But still, like, God, how wasteful are these parties?
When you're running a restaurant, you end up utilizing everything.
Oh, you bring all the stuff back.
Well, yeah, but it's hard to do it off-site because
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
How do you bring
Yeah.
enough to have, you always have something left over, so
Yeah.
you turn it into something, a family meal, whatever it
Yeah.
might be. But off-site was a completely different animal. This one took a few years off my life. It was incredibly stressful
Dude.
and difficult. And
it's the investor.
and it's the investor. I remember even putting the wedding cake together. Our pastry chef did an amazing cake, but they wanted it to be very
Like flamboyant, big and bountiful.
Of course, like it's
Yeah,
their
it's-
daughter getting married, and
Yeah.
I ordered all these very, very delicate and lifelike looking sugar flowers to kind of put up all around. It.
Okay.
I remember they were like $3,000 or something like that.
What?
Yeah, and
This must have been like a $250,000 catering event.
I mean, I think it was like kind of done at cost because of it was
Oh,
right.
What a
But
great
here I'm-
reason to
But
invest
here
in a
I'm
restaurant.
thinking like, it's their daughter's wedding. What do they care about? $3,000 for sugar flowers on a cake for 400 people, right?
Okay, yeah.
Right?
Yeah, you split that up,
but
unit economics. That's like less than, that's like 10 cents a head.
Somebody saw them, and I informed somebody in accounting about how much it cost, and I had to send it back. So then I'm like, well, what is going on? Well, I don't know what to do for this wedding cake, right? So our pastry chef put together a beautiful cake, and it was awesome. But
And
it
you
was
had to send back these
simpler.
flowers?
Yeah.
Talk about a fucking weird phone call to make to a vendor.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Right. So it was just like battling uphill, the whole thing.
Fuck.
Um,
Every part of it just feels like pain.
Yeah. And I remember the investor himself liked like a lot of game meats and stuff. So I got these game sausages and things like that. But I think he was the only one that liked them. So that was one of the things that wasn't really selling. Or,
Wasn't
some of
moving
the
on
dudes
the-
there like the venison cranberry sausage thing,
Yeah.
right? But it wasn't really moving. So I invested in that being part of what would go.
Which is why
I
the
didn't-
lamb chops were all gone.
Exactly. And then I should have pulled up the menu. I'm sure I have it somewhere. But then it had been raining all day, and it's midnight by this time. We'd been working 48 hours straight on just the parties, but 2 days before that on getting everything set up
The
and
prep
trayed
and all
up
that
and wrapped
shit.
up and ready to go to be put in the car. It was a lot of elevators and back and forth and traffic and
Driving.
running around.
Yeah.
And fully exhausted. Everyone's exhausted. And we're going to pull the truck out, and the dude that was driving wasn't quite. Everyone was parked on the grass, right? We were kind of on this little hill,
Oh, and it was raining.
and it was raining.
Oh,
And he started to hit the gas. I'm like, no, slow down. And he just floored it, and the car spun out and hit a guest's car.
What?
Yeah.
This is what insurance is for.
So then I had to have that conversation with the investor at midnight about what had just happened and find the person whose car it was.
No.
Yeah, it was.
Damn.
All of it was terrible and hard. People seem to have a good time.
You're like, hey, but if it makes you feel better, I got all this extra venison sausage for you.
Well, Well, plus everyone's having a party, and I had to like kind of track them down.
Oh
right?
no.
Yeah, and
Do you-
all these kind of like uber wealthy people, like one started
Fuck.
speaking to me in Spanish.
That's
I'm like, I don't understand what you're saying, but she was speaking to me in very kind of fancy Spanish, and I said, I don't understand. I need the guy who owns the house to tell me whose car this is so I can go home. So then I ended up getting home at like 3 a.m. or something.
and of course you're expected to show up for your shift tomorrow.
I think it was a weekend, right? It was Sunday. I think it was a Friday, Saturday event. And we had to do something, give the truck back because we got a rental truck it was a rental truck too.
Oh,
So I had to
God.
inspect if there was any damage on it and stuff. Thankful that there wasn't, but then.
Thank God you returned those $3,000 sugar flowers.
Yeah, exactly.
How did you guys take care of the?
Oh, you know what? I think we had to go back out there the next day and do a little bit of cleanup. That's right. That just dawned on me. I think we had to go back out.
Oh, right, because what else would you want than have to go all the way back?
Yeah. Yeah. So
And,
that was
and
that was
can't
my,
leave one demi-tasse spoon
that was
behind. How
my
could you?
the most catastrophic to my psyche catering events, but I would have to say most catering events are very difficult to pull off.
Yeah, I hated banquets and catering.
It's a very manual job.
They're money makers. They can be
That's
money makers.
why people do it, right?
Yeah.
But you.
They're
you
incredibly
work hard
difficult.
to get there. Yeah.
Holy shit!
Set up and set down and pull up and rentals and it's a lot of activity.
You know what? It's interesting you say that because it's the physical part of these events and the physical part of actually running like an operation is what people will never like a guest who's never been in a restaurant will never truly appreciate. And this actually makes me think of another job that I had, which was the Capitol Grill in Philadelphia on the corner of Broad and Chestnut. I'd always wanted to work there, and I started showing up every Monday, which was my day off. I would show up every Monday with a resume. I'd go right to the hostess desk or the host stand, and there was a great manager there that I always had a little bit of a crush on, but she was just so professional and energy. And at this time in like 2005, the Capitol Grill was like the shit. It was the busiest, fancy. It was like the powerhouse restaurant of Philadelphia. This was back when Capitol Grill, there might have been 10 of them or less, right? It was like a burgeoning, growing hospitality group. I'm like 21 or so. All of the staff there is like career staffers, like career servers. They've all worked at Lebec Fenn and they've worked at high-end steakhouses in New York. And it's just got this, this prestige to it, and I'm like, I want to go work there. So I would show up every Monday for like probably 3 months. And finally, Janelle was like, you just really want to work here, don't you? I was already working at a steakhouse in Jersey, but I wanted to work at the best one. And so she's like, what are you doing tomorrow? And I'm like, I'm working at my other job, but what's up? She's like, look, come in, fill in your paperwork whenever you have some time. You'll be in our next training class.
Wow.
Right on the spot there. Not on the spot because it took probably 15 trips to the Capitol Grill for this to happen.
You got hired.
But she remembered me.
Right. And just hired you on the spot.
And hired me right there. So I was all excited, and I'm like, I'm working at the fanciest, nicest steakhouse in the entire city. This is going to be the shit, right? I went and gave notice, and the steakhouse where I was working was like, don't go. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you don't know what you're signing up for. I'm like, you guys have no idea where I'm going to work. It's where all the baseball players go. It's where it's the place. Bro, this place was insane. Dude, so of course I'm a young gun, so I'm getting hazed everywhere. Whether it's the side work or it's the station I get or like the area and the restaurant I get to serve. So Capitol Grill was a big restaurant. It probably had like 200 to 300 seats. I don't even know what the final count was. Had a big ass bar. It was very busy. And there was a famous section of the restaurant called the Chestnut Room. So if you could imagine a city block, right? Let's say this is a city block. Back here is the kitchen. And back behind the kitchen, there was elevators to go into the basement. There was a bunch of prep that happened back there. And on the first floor, with like the ground floor, there was, the kitchen where you pick up food, you do all kinds of stuff. There was this portion of a dining room that kind of faced out from the kitchen because it was an open kitchen. And then there was a big bar, probably like a 30-seater bar. And then beyond the bar, on the back corner, it was called the Chestnut Room because it overlooked Chestnut Street.
Ah, gotcha.
And it was like a little dining room, its own
like
little
a PDR?
section.
Or
They would seat it for normal dining, and sometimes they would do it for PDR, but it was like its own section of a restaurant. And they're like, all the newbies would always have to work in the Chestnut Room.
so far away.
Yeah, but I'm like, yeah, I'll do whatever you ask me to. I got this, right? I've been a fucking bar back at the Olive. This is nothing. Bro, I had never worked this hard in my life. So for starters...
Worse than the bar back.
Dude, this was the most physically demanding job I had ever done. And not only that, since I'm like a young gun and, I'm expected to do all the setup, all the table changes, all the updates of the dining room, and look, as it should be, all the younger dudes were in charge of setting up the room for, we got an 8-top, a 12-top, a 16-top.
I mean, that many. You must have been doing 600 or 700 covers a night.
Yes, that place was crazy
if not
packed.
more.
We would, literally, we would straight up, 4:30. Like the dining room would open at 5, and at 4:30, people were lined up to come in for dinner. It was one of the busiest places I had ever been, and I remember, we would have to set up the tables, and in the basement we had this whole area of like pop-up tables, and these things are like 100 pounds.
Right.
They're big, sturdy, like wooden tables with flip-up ends, and like underneath they're jagged because how many people has like hit them. And dude, so me and the bus boys and sometimes other like younger servers would have to like set up these rooms. So you would like pick up these heavy ass fucking tables and like shimmy them into this elevator. And then sometimes the elevator was busy because other people are bringing prep stuff up and blah, blah, blah. And you're against the clock all the time. So, like, you just have this pressure. And, like, so sometimes we'd have to take the steps. So, like, it would be like 4 flights of steps up to the dining room.
This sounds like one of those jobs where you just show up early and don't clock in till your scheduled time just so you can get
Well,
ready
dude,
for
and
service.
what's the point of clocking in when you make $2 an hour?
True.
Like, who the fuck cares if you're clocked in or not? Bro, so we would be like, it was insane, dude. And there was nothing worse than so let's say you have like a 12-top, right? Like in order to maximize space, you would probably take one of the 4-tops and another 4-top, and then you would put a table in the middle that wasn't necessarily like dining room aesthetic. You know what I mean? Like it might have been like a more banqueting table.
Cover over it.
It's got a cover over it, right? But it would be in the middle of these, and but like normally it would be like a 4-top, a 4-top, a 4-top, let's say. But in order to maximize space, you'd bring one of these like banquety tables and put it in the middle so you could still have the dining room essentially set up in the same way, but you'd have this extra table in the middle of these 2 others to make a 12-top, and then now it's a 4-top. So you'd maximize the space that way. Dude, nothing worse. People, guests of the world, please communicate with your restaurants if things change. Because, dude, we would like, for example, have like a 5-top or like a 4 that turned into a 12, and we do like
a 4 that turned into a 12.
Yeah, dude, like these things, right? Where like
you'd have the table.
You'd take 2 4-tops and make it into a 12-top. So you'd have to take this heavy ass fucking banquet table from downstairs
and then
bring it up,
eight people would show
rearrange, or they'd be like, this table canceled, like. And you've already set up, and you're like, what the fuck? And then you got to undo the 12-top, take the heavy ass thing. You already brought up the steps, back down the steps, and dude, like, back then there wasn't step counters, but I could only imagine the number of steps I did. Dude, yes, I bet we would easily do 25,000 steps. And when you worked in the chestnut room, if somebody was like, hey, can I have Tabasco? You're like, absolutely. Turn around. You're going a city block to the kitchen to get Tabasco sauce. Then you turn around and have to come back. And then somebody would be like, oh, I forgot to ask you, is there any way I could have some au poivre? Absolutely. You fucking turn around. You go back to the kitchen. I need a side of au poivre sauce. They're like, you got to ring it in. Then you're like, cool. Then you go to another half a block to go to like a server station because the one that's next to the kitchen is always fucking busy. You ring it in. Then you go over, ask for it. They're like, well, come back. We got to warm it up. Oh, okay.
By the time you get back to the table, the person's gone.
Yeah, exactly. And bro, but the thing about the Capitol Grill was, in these days, like, end of night was worse than the setup. End of night, you got all the shit. Like, you had a busy shift. And, you know, and the plates, dude. The plates at steakhouses are like 12 pounds each. They're fucking crazy. And it's like, I don't know what it is about, you know, you have these great interactions with guests and like you make friends and you're like, how was your dinner? Did you enjoy everything? And then they want to launch into like a story about their life, you know, like, or why they're in Philadelphia, or, you know, this side dish reminded me of this one time. And bro, like, you, once you cleared, you know, it was beat into your brain, like, once you clear, you have to finish clearing. You can't leave anything behind. And if you had like a table of 4, you're supposed to get a buddy. And dude, often, you know, we'd like,
what do you suppose is the point of that? Just to make it
so
clean,
that everything's up at once,
Got
right?
it.
So that like there's not like leftover remnants on the table, and like it was beat into us.
Is
like
it also kind of so the guest knows it's time to go in a way?
It could be a signal for us. Mostly, it was a way to, like, when the goal was, when food hit the table, it all hit together. And when everything was done, it was all gone together, right? To just make it feel seamless, and like there was attention put on the table. And like we had these rules where like if it was more than 2 people at a table, you'd have to get a buddy to
Get it all done.
clear,
right.
yes. And so what would happen inevitably, at least a few times a night, and these fucking plates are like I said, they're literally 12 pounds, some of these plates. Like, big ass ribeye comes on a big porcelain plate. And I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was just how charismatic we were or what, but people wanted to start conversation with us. Once they're done eating, they've got like a pound of porterhouse in their belly, and like they're feeling like the dopamine spike.
3-4 glasses of wine.
Yeah,
2
3, 4,
martinis.
7 martinis. And then they want to have conversation with you. And bro, like, inevitably, at least a few times a night, I'd like clear, and you know, I want to get this over with, right? So you, let's say, clear 3 big ass plates, some sides, you know, there's always one thing to take, so you can't stack that one. And then they're like, so where are you from? And you've got 100 pounds of plate in your hand, and you have one little
Greasy plate with
dainty
stuff.
side of cream spinach that you're like trying not to, dude. And you'll go to any dining room, any steakhouse dining room, and you'll see it looks like the pee-pee dance, because you have all this stuff in your hands, and you'll inevitably see a server like trying to rest their arms with different things in different positions in the middle of what looks like a very normal conversation. Just like, oh, your daughter's going to UPenn, huh? And you're like trying to like be cordial and engaged, but at the same time trying not to fucking like splash
Like,
a bunch of
please
shit.
Please tip well. Please tip well. Please tip well.
Dude, sometimes you're just like, I need to get, lady, I gotta go. You know what I mean? Like, I'm sure your recipe for carrot cake is better than ours. I guarantee it's better than ours. But if I don't fucking leave the table right now, this precious little side of au gratin, the 2 tablespoons of au gratin you want me to wrap is about to end up on the floor, miss. So, and then people would eat like 2 bites of their steak because they get like a wedge, whatever. And like, I'm trying not to just, like garbage man it all onto one plate because I'm just exhausted. But these are the things that you learn. And later on, as you develop some of your veteran muscle memory skills, then you ask, how was everything before you start to clear tables? How was your meal? Oh, it was wonderful. Oh my God, yeah. You start to learn, and then you also learn to leave your other friends who are helping you clear tables, or vice versa. You leave them out to dry. So if like, mom wants to make conversation, they'd be like, oh my goodness, yeah, we saw a fantastic show today. You're like clearing the table. We saw the best show at the Philadelphia Symphony today. And I'm like, oh my God, Rob loves the symphony. And then you just fucking run back, right? Knowing now Rob is stuck holding on
see you guys
to
playing
heavy ass
back and
plates.
forth, but you're going to get it back. You got to wait.
Yeah.
But it's going to get back to you.
Yeah. Dude, we used to do so many fun things. You just reminded me, one of the runners that I worked with at another steakhouse named Preston was awesome, dude. We used to have a lot of fun. And we used to joke that on really busy Saturdays, and especially like once like a table of like, like business dudes or whatever is like so hungry, they've been like drinking at the bar and like talking shit. And by the time they hit the table and they have their oysters, they're like half in the bag and just ready for their Delmonico or whatever they ordered. Sometimes just to see what people would like. We had like seats and stuff, but so we knew 1, 2, 3, 4 what everybody got, like a filet medium, and here's your pork chops with apple puree or whatever, right? But just to like keep ourselves going through the shift, he's like, yo, bro, watch when you drop this at the table, these people are so fucking like famished and ready to go that you can say anything and they'll get excited. So he would like have like a filet mignon, and he'd walk up to like a table of like just half hammered people like ready to go, and he'd be like, and miss, your fla fla floof. And she'd be like, oh my God, yes. And I'd be like, and your Hagen Haka, right? And they'd be like, oh, that's mine, the Hagen Haka. You know what I mean? Like, people are just so excited to eat that anything you said, they'd just be like, yeah. And bro, it was insane.
Hilarious.
Dude, it was great.
Anymore, it's like you're not really sure if you're describing the farm where it was raised or
bro,
whatever.
I would much rather say, and you're schmecking meh. I'd much rather somebody say that, and the schmecking meh is finished with makahaha. I'd rather someone say that than constantly interrupt my conversation to let me know how I'm supposed to eat the dish. What has happened
That's
to
happening
us?
less and less, but it definitely was a thing.
It's
and still at certain places.
You're like talking about like, like
I'm here to have a conversation with my date. I'm not here to,
Or like, you're out to dinner with your family and like somebody passed away and you're like, oh my God, I remember that time that blah, blah, blah. And they're like, St. The chef now has prepared a wild bay scallop finished with algae. The idea of the dish is we're going to torch it in front of you. We're going to use tweezers to now put single strands of saffron that were handpicked by an Iranian.
We're going to have to talk about that show on a later podcast, that movie that we watched recently. We'll get into that. It's
the greatest work of comedy that has ever been made.
It's the end of an era.
It's the end of an era.
What was it called?
It was great. We actually saw it in Manila.
Right.
We saw it in Manila like a couple years ago.
Yeah.
It was called, not the kitchen, not the anyway, we'll have to do a show on that.
Yeah. We'll pop it up on the screen.
Do you have another physically exhausting experience that you can recall?
Well, the cruise line, working on the cruise line, and funny aside, we were at a restaurant just 2 nights ago.
Yes.
And
we went to a great restaurant in Manila called Blackbird.
It's actually the
Had
old
a-
side of
It's
the
a-
airport.
Yes, it's a. If you ever get a chance to come to Manila, it's in a part of town called Makati, and Blackbird is a really cool restaurant.
Super fun.
Yeah, great. food.
Except our table was outside and like 10 people checked with us.
Yes.
Is it outside? Sorry, I just dropped my phone. It was very loud.
No worries. Things happen.
It's outside. Is that okay? It's outside. Is that okay?
Yeah, they
Because
kept
it's
on
like
reminding us.
80% humidity here, so
Holy
you want to
shit,
make
dude.
sure that you're going to be okay with that. But it was
Yeah.
nice. It was a lovely experience.
It was a great dinner.
And the waitress,
Bea.
Bea, had said she was going to go work on a cruise line.
That's
And I
right.
said, I used to work on a cruise line. I used to work on
Yes.
Seabourn Cruise Lines. And she says, oh, the one of the chefs comes in all the time. He was in here yesterday. And his name is Tony Egger. I'm like, that's the dude I used to work with
Tony
on the cruise line.
Yeager.
I haven't talked to him in like 15 years. We'd share like little texts back and forth if I saw him
Right.
in a magazine or something, but very sparsely
Yeah.
communicated. And then I find out that through this random conversation,
Wild.
find out that he's actually staying in Manila part-time part of the year. We've got to get him on a
Insane.
podcast. He couldn't make it today on just short notice, but
And after 15 years, we got to have a bottle of wine and catch up with him. And
Yeah.
he was really fun, dude. I can
Yeah.
only imagine. So what is it like working on a cruise liner? Because I can only imagine the kind of shit you got to deal with.
it's intense, especially because it was Charlie Palmer doing his menus. We're redoing everything, right? It wasn't just wasn't just going to work on a cruise ship.
So tell me a little about Seabourn. So this is not like and not to talk smack, but it's not like the Carnival cruise line, right? Where
No, it's a very
it's a bunch of Caesar
intimate-
salads and
No.
flat,
There's certainly a bunch of Caesar salads, but aren't there always?
Yes.
Um,
I love Caesar salad.
They're luxury yachts, I would say. I
Okay.
think that there were like double the amount of staff on than customers.
Are you
So there'd be
serious?
like 110 customers and 250 crew,
Holy
right?
shit.
Between everything. I mean, a ship takes a lot of people to,
I
and you're
can't.
there, so it's not like you can just call in a plumber, right? You need a plumber living on the ship.
Oh my God! Right.
And we were redoing the menus. It was there's a 7-day cruise, a 14-day cruise, and then a 21-day cruise.
Jesus.
So that's what they would offer the people, the
Right.
clientele.
Right.
So we'd have to have a 21-day menu for the people who were on the 21-day cruise. So we would have to change the menu every day for 21 days.
Holy
So
shit.
the spreadsheet you'd have to kind of you still have to do it in a way that you were utilizing the ingredients up as you went.
Of
right?
course.
But you couldn't repeat anything from one day to the next.
Right.
So you'd always have like,
It's like the
a poultry option, a meat
opposite
option.
of banquet.
in a way.
And it's like it's a premier cruise line, so you want to impress them.
Of course.
And part of the expectation is that you're going to deliver this gastronomic event every night.
Yeah. With tasting menus and all that jazz. And they'd have a small bistro section.
Sure.
You could always get a roasted chicken with vegetables if you wanted to. And
Dude.
the clientele was all very affluent and older.
Yes, and
So you could kind of guess what they were going to go for, you know?
what would the poached salmon at 5:30?
We did have poached salmon, definitely. But everyone ate at the same restaurant every night, too. So every night, I'm sorry, there were 2 restaurants, but
Okay.
but primarily everyone would go to the main dining room. 80% of the people who were on the ship. And you'd have to change the menu every night. So there'd be a hot soup, a cold soup, a consommé, a potage, a consommé, and a cold soup every night. Different.
What's a potage, Tony?
Just like a thicker soup.
Okay.
That's what they called it. I wish I had the full breakdown of the menu. I couldn't find it before the podcast. But then there'd be 2 different salads, 3 or 4 different cold appetizers, if not 5, something around there. And then your standard vegetarian dish, meat dish, poultry dish, fish dish. And then 3 different desserts also, one which had to be sugar-free.
Sugar-free?
Yeah, and I would have to say that, we were talking just yesterday with a restaurant owner who was like, you just can't, a bread recipe doesn't, everywhere in the world, the same recipe, everywhere in the world, you come up with a different product.
That's so crazy.
Working with, we'd spent weeks coming up with the menus and doing recipes and the special program and all that kind of stuff, but, you have different ingredients from a different part of the world. Shit just cooks different. especially on the pastry side. That was really difficult to find the things that meant the same, translated to the same items you were used to using in the States, but are available through the
Whatever
cruise
port
line.
you're in, right?
Well, you wouldn't get stuff from the port. You would get stuff. Most of it came ahead of time. You would do little excursions and stuff to get things for
Herbs or something.
right. Like if you did it would be like with the chef would take some of the guests out, and we're going to do a little something and do a little thing.
Got
But
it.
by and large, you weren't. If you were getting stuff on the ship, it was pre-sent there from the same organization which you bought everything from in the first place, and you'd work with an agent to get things on the ship. So it was more like shipping things around than going on into a port and buying things from the store. And a lot of the ports are just like fishing villages with,
Right.
I remember one port, they'd catch the fish, they'd put it on a like a tarp on the dock. At the end of the day, they just pull the tarp up. All the fish would go back in the ocean. They just come and do the same thing the next day because they don't have like refrigeration and things like that.
Oh, no shit.
Yeah.
So were these fish like brining if they didn't sell them all? Would they just throw them back in the water?
No, they just throw them back in the water, and they just whatever.
Chum it?
Yeah.
No
basically.
fucking way.
Yeah. I think that was in Brazil, if I'm not
It's
mistaken.
a great way. I
remember
mean,
that.
Woof.
Plus, like, mad cow disease was a big thing at the time.
Interesting.
And they had to be very particular about that, I'm remembering.
Interesting.
About what they'd get where and when and all that kind of stuff. But when the cruise first started on its new 21-day rotation, or wherever it was coming from, the walk-ins would be, like, they'd fill them from the menu that's in the back to the menu that's in the front. So you'd open the door, it'd just be a solid. There was no way to get to the thing that was in the back unless you took the skinniest kid and like had him go up
And you had to like
find the frisee.
So you had to plan your fridge setup
Yes.
based off of when in the trip you may potentially use, for example, a potato.
Right.
Or
And then imagine you're trying to make these different experiences every day. If something didn't show up, or they sent all frisee instead of mush or whatever,
dude, now you're using the Brussels sprouts for whatever, the scallop dish on the.
that's all you got. And you could, of course, get some things. At that small of a clientele, you could get some things around.
So these were
right?
like 100 people on these.
Yeah.
Okay.
But the bigger ships, that would be impossible. What was I going to say? Yeah, so, you get a substitution or something. That was very difficult to run your menu, then take photos, because we were making sure that we had examples of the dishes for everybody.
Oh, right,
and stuff
because you're in some cases you might be. How many people would be in a dining room? Like 60 people, something like that?
No, I seem to remember it being kind of basically one seating.
One,
so
okay.
you could show up anytime, but you weren't
I see.
turning tables necessarily. It could be a little bit wrong, but
So
generally. Then if it got wavy, right?
Oh my God! What would happen?
Well, plates would crash, things would go over. You had these rails around the flat tops, so that even if the pans were moving, they wouldn't.
No
off.
way!
Kind
I
of
wouldn't
like
even think of that.
Ping-ponging around, but it would happen more often than you think. Like a pile of plates would just go over.
No shit.
Yeah.
Dude, so what's funny, I was going to ask you, you don't even think about this kind of stuff. It's crazy how the elements can change your experience so much from, like little things can throw things off and that was one of the things I was going to bring up. But so I've been in one cruise one time. I was like maybe 15 or 16 years old, and I went on a cruise with my mom, and it was a Carnival cruise. And I loved that there was a buffet all the time. This was, I think, just before I started working in restaurants. My mom like won a trip or some shit, and we went to a cruise. And I remember thinking it was amazing that there was always food available. But obviously I had no empathy for what it was like to work in a restaurant yet. And later on, I loved and stayed in steakhouses very often because I just wanted to work a dinner shift and be responsible for one service, not like all these different services.
These ships were such that they didn't have buffets all the time, but you could call up and get whatever you wanted
all the time.
Yeah.
And what kind of shifts were you working? Like, did you get days off on the boat or anything?
No, there are no days off on the boat. That's why come day 3 or 4 or 5, everything started to get really hazy, and you just forget what day it even was. It was just,
What the fuck? So you wake up, you're at work, of course, and
you're always kind of working on tomorrow's menu too. So that got really complicated in my brain. Like they're prepping for tomorrow today, and it's always a different menu. So you're kind of like, wait, weren't we just? No, that was yesterday, because 2 days before.
So there's
you
2
prepped today's
menus running
menu.
essentially every day.
Well, you're prepping for tomorrow,
Yeah.
but you're running today's, but it's all brand new.
Holy shit,
Yeah.
man. So essentially, it sounds like you got to be hyper organized.
Yes.
On a cruise line.
Yes.
Jeez, man. And then, like, how does...
And the entire staff was Filipino. That's where I picked up a few Tagalog words, because the
Got
kitchen
it.
staff was all Filipino. The chefs, they do these hiring would be in different parts of the world. So
Got
I
it.
remember, like, say the like, what do we call them? The people who would clean the rooms and stuff like that. The
like
service
stewards.
Stewards. They
Yeah.
would all be from Eastern Europe. The kitchen would all be from
From the Philippines?
from the Philippines. The chefs, the chef would all be from Germany, or
Got it.
mostly Germans, I imagine. I think.
Interesting.
And
And
the
you were
haircut place were always Australian, so it was this interesting mix.
There were barbers on the boats?
Of course, they had like
I didn't... What
Yeah,
do you mean, of course?
Dude, this was like they had like formal nights. They had attire, like, would be listed on tonight's attire is black tie, tonight's attire is casual, right? So
I-
all this.
Look, I've never had a fancy... I've only had one boat experience, and it was like, like the most accessible one. I mean, my mom won a free trip on a boat. I mean, it's not going to be like the schmancy one. This sounds cool.
It was cool. It was hard.
Not to work on, to experience.
But it was, every once in a while you'd be sailing, as getting out of the kitchen somewhat and like pulling up to Egypt was a pretty awesome experience. And you'd get to wherever you're getting on and off the ships, I'd get to spend a little time there. So
okay,
that was
cool. All right. So once you dock,
Be like
There-
in Venice. I'd be like, okay, I'll go to Venice 2 days early, and
got it.
no one knew I was going on early though. No one knew that. And one time someone was looking for me, and the ship said, I don't know where he is. He's not on the boat. But I wasn't supposed to be on the boat yet. Sorry, it's a ship. A ship fits on a boat. A boat doesn't fit on a ship. Or a boat fits on a ship. A ship doesn't fit on a boat. That's the rule.
Okay.
It's a ship. So I wasn't on the ship, and everyone started scrambling around looking for me. There were no smartphones. I didn't think I had a smartphone.
Do you
I got
remember
in trouble
those
once.
beautiful, glorious days
Yeah.
of not having to be accessible to the rest of the world at all times?
I figured it out though. I made it.
No,
I made
but
it.
you just made me miss
I know.
not having to
I
carry
enjoyed
cell
it.
phones around.
So it's like hanging out in Venice. Meanwhile, everyone's looking for me.
Well, that's a perfect segue when you're in Venice and everyone's looking for you, because we want to add a little structure to the potty moving forward. And we were just in Japan,
Yes.
and we saw on one of the menus a dish that kind of threw us for a loop. And the dish was horse sashimi. And I had asked you how you would eat horse if you had to, because I don't think sashimi is the way I would like to have horse.
Probably not.
And
Did I say something? Did I say what I?
no, I
I
think
think
we
I
were
said
trying
grilled
to...
with the loaded chimichurri.
Okay, grilled
But
with
I'm thinking like burger style.
a horse burger.
Yeah.
Holy fuck.
What's the difference?
I
Because you
mean-
could just grind it, cook it well,
Well,
put a bunch of pickles on it.
I actually was able, Tony, to recall one of my great friends. His name is Chris Wanamaker, who is a history major, also a somm. And he had once told me that the most classic pairing to a famous wine from Italy, actually close to
It was made for a
Venice.
horse.
So
I know what you're going to say.
you do.
I think so.
So, yes, the dish, which is called pastisada de caval, is a famous dish from Verona. And it is the perfect pairing for
Let me guess.
Amarone
Amarone, yes.
della Valpolicella.
Yeah.
And so this dish goes by this history. In September of 489, at San Martino Buon Albergo, the armies of Theodoric, king of the Ostrogoths, and Odoacre, king of the Eruli, faced each other. Theodoric emerged victorious from the bloody battle, which left thousands of men and horses dead on the battlefield. Seeing the rotting meat on the field, the king declared that it could be used contrary to the papal ruling. To overcome the smell of the meat, it was marinated in red wine and then cooked. Generally, it is served with gnocchi or polenta.
So it was a braised.
So this dish is, again, the name of this dish is pastisada de caval. And this dish is traditionally horse meat, and it's supposed to be the perfect pairing to go along with amarone. And it's
Why do you think that is?
well,
Probably
so,
it's because that's what the king grabbed.
Look,
Right.
it's because there was rotting horse corpses in the middle of a battlefield.
Sounds good with gnocchi.
Yeah, exactly. And so so there's many versions of this dish, with some of them being a quick braise, and then others being like this super spicy, aromatic. Now, I'm not going to compare it to mole, because mole is super. I mean, maybe I can. I don't know. But it evokes mole in that some of the more complex renditions of this dish involve really slow braising. According to some recipes I read, you take horse meat. Usually it's either the loin or the cheeks or the neck.
Huh.
And
I'd imagine it's all pretty lean.
yes. And they say that this dish is incredibly complex because the horse meat is very iron rich and very minerally complex. And that, long story
How
short,
long do you have to let it rot before you cook it? To be,
we're gonna have to ask a
to do it traditionally.
a Veronese. How I would love to try this. But so there are versions of this dish, right? So in some of them, they will marinate the horse meat and then they'll flour it. But the marinating could be a day long in what calls for valpolicella or amarone in the actual marination
Wow.
of the meat.
Expensive.
Yes. And so it's a bunch of white onions, about equal the amount of white onions to the horse. You sear it in butter or lard or sometimes bacon fat. And then they'll add a bunch of different spices to it in what becomes this long braise. In the most complex versions, they say that the braise might be a 36 to 48 hour
Braise?
braise.
Wow.
Wild, right? And so
I mean, it must just completely
melt,
Right.
I'm sure. And I would love to try this. And
I wonder why. Wonder why you'd have to braise it that long.
I'll
look it up.
and this is just
Second.
based off of one recipe and one version that I'm seeing, or I don't know, marinating for 24 hours, slow braising for 8 hours, then reconstituting it once you've reduced the sauce down. I mean, it looks like it can get pretty complex.
Huh.
But long story short, it says the stew is very suitable as a stuffing. Imagine stuffing horse. But anyway, long story short, so we're looking at a really complex dish. It's got stock, vegetable, or horse stock, in case you have some horse stock laying
literally
around.
calling for horse stock, dude. Are you joking me?
No.
Lord.
I mean this guy, whoever made this, makes or made this dish. I mean, I'd love to try this. But anyway,
Somehow the idea of horse stock seems odder to me than
otter stock. So we've got the valpolicella, we've got stock, we've got cinnamon, we've got cloves, we've got black pepper, we've got fresh rosemary sprigs, bay leaves, and then a ton of juniper. For 5 kilos of horse meat, it calls for 50 juniper berries.
So this, I mean, it makes sense that they were overspicing it if the meat was
Was
truly
rotted.
right. But it's funny how these things stick around, even though now using fresh meat, the flavor
Right.
profile has remained that this is how you have to do that, even though it was made to cover meat going rancid from the battlefield.
Jesus.
Now it's become how this dish is prepared. That's interesting. Super interesting. I mean, it's interesting.
It's a funny story, right? And so, I've never you used to live by a horse farm, right? Or like not a horse farm. I'm sorry. When you were in Paris, you
Yeah.
used to live,
By a horse butcher.
and you still have never had it,
I don't believe so.
huh? Well, I would love to
We'll
try
have to make
this
it
dish.
a little bit of an event. We'll have
That
to go
sounds-
to. We'll have to go to Italy.
Well, maybe we can go for the cruise line. We can do a little seaborne cruise, hopefully not working this time, and we can enjoy some. Man, this is a tough one to remember. The name of this dish: pastisada de caval.
Caval. Caval means horse in Italian, I'm guessing.
I've always thought that cavallo, or cavalotto. I don't know. Maybe there's different versions of caval, or in Spanish it's caballo. So
It's interesting, the juniper berry, right? I mean, that's a really kind of a.
Dude.
It's such an intense and specific flavor.
yes,
And I mean, I'm not.
I
no-
think gin. That's the only thing I can
course.
think of when I think of juniper.
Of course, and pickling spice, right?
Yes, which sometimes can be pretty intense.
That's what I mean. It's got
Yeah.
a very intense flavor. I mean, you can tell they wanted something that would really, for the long cooking time.
Mask the rot.
Amarone is a really intense
Big time
wine.
intense. Yeah, that's a wine that's like they'll dry grapes,
on the vine, right?
not on the vine.
Hmm.
That's usually in Germany and in Central Europe. They have like a lot of styles, or in Sauterne, where they will let the grape on the vine, either a certain type of rot or fungus will grow on it.
Trockenbeeren auslesen.
Right. So like a TBA, which is from Germany, usually made in the Mosel, they'll allow the wines to sit, or the grapes to sit on the vine for extended periods of time, with the hope that that the sugars within the grape will concentrate, and the raisination will create
Raisination.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, because the growing season is shorter and they want to develop those sugars.
yes.
Otherwise, they'd have to pick it to be too green.
Well, and what happens is all this extra sugar, or bricks, that's developed inside of the grape,
Brix.
yes, will allow for a different type of wine experience. And in Amarone, it's a unique style unto itself, where they will dry the grapes, and then they will let's say for 3 months, and there's a bunch of different styles. You can do them on straw mats. There's more modern
So you
producers
get
like Del
a really
Forno.
intense flavor, but
Yeah.
far less juice, right? Of course. So
Yes,
that's why
and
it's
higher
expense
alcohol,
higher
and then
alcohol.
more sugar, and more viscosity, and more intensity of flavor. And Amarone is a really interesting wine that will develop like this fruit cakey, figgy kind of flavor because of this drying. But
Right.
I wonder how it pairs with juniper in a dish.
That's interesting. I mean, I can't
What-
imagine it. I can't imagine it.
What do you know about juniper? Like, do you have any idea where they're
Gin,
from?
Of course. They're from, I think it's the only herb that comes from like an evergreen. Like it comes from like a cypress
Oh.
type of a tree.
Interesting.
And it's actually not even a berry. It's some part of a cone. Let me look at this. I need to know.
interesting. Because it does have that evergreeny flavor.
Contrary to popular belief, juniper berries are not true berries.
Huh.
Rather, they're cone-like structures that have evolved to resemble berries. These small, fleshy cones are commonly used for culinary and medicinal purposes.
Does
So
it
it's-
mention where they're from?
Well, Northern Europe, they're all over Europe.
Oh, all over Europe you
Right.
find junipers. Okay,
Right.
got it.
I mean, we had juniper berries. You see them in landscaping all the time.
Are you serious?
Yeah,
Oh, I had no idea.
yeah, you see them all over the place.
And it's, you know what?
There's,
now-
of course, there's. I don't know how many varieties of juniper
Sure.
there are, but you see those like low, like scrubby-looking evergreen trees.
I know what you're talking about.
Those are junipers. The little blue berries that not berries but cones. I guess.
Right.
That's juniper.
Very interesting. Well, now that we know about horse meat and we know about juniper, Tony, to finish the show, what I'd like to do is present to you a couple different craft beers. The reason I do this is because the world of craft beer has gotten pretty crazy over the last couple years. And you know, there's all kinds of crazy names. There's all different kinds of styles. And
There's so many, they're all trying to really stand out from the
they're
others.
really starting. Yeah, they want to figure out how to, of course, stand out, like you said, from the craft. I mean, craft beer movement has exploded over the last. I'm a pretty simple beer drinker, but you'll often, every once in a while, like dive into like a nice little craft, like a local craft.
There's a lot of breweries around where I live in Beacon, and you know, you go and meet friends and do something. You'll try a little bit of something here and there.
Yeah. Well, what I'd like to do to finish
Filling
the
them.
show is I'm going to present you with two different beers. One is not real, and the other is.
This could go a lot of ways.
You have to choose.
Chocolate double barrel stout sour.
I'm going to go one step further, my friend. So here are two beer names.
Two names.
And you choose which is real. The first is Sheep Shagger Scotch Ale. Sheep Shagger Scotch Ale. Okay? And let's see, the other is Hung Like a Horse Double IPA. Which of these two first would you rather drink? The Hung Like a Horse Double IPA or the Sheep Shagger Scotch
I'd rather be hung like a
Ale?
horse than a sheep shack. I'm gonna go with hung like a horse, since horse was a part of our recipe, part of the context. I'm gonna go with that one is the real one.
Well, Mr. Ayazi.
I knew it. I wanted it to be the real thing.
Ah!
I knew that sheep shagger was the real one just because I had a nice. You could tell that was a nice. You know.
Sheep Shagger Scotch Ale from Tyanena Brewery. Look at that. The label is beautiful. And that guy kind of looks like my uncle, who may have been a sheep shagger.
Vascos.
Anyway, Los Vascos. Tony, it's been an excellent show. It's been a lot of fun.
We're
Thanks.
going back tonight. We'll have to do our next little
Oh,
round.
and in the end, I wanna thank you for conceding to the front of the house. I think we do have.
I don't know if I conceded. I
No?
said it was equal. I
Is
didn't
that what you said?
concede. I said that I wouldn't do it, but I understand. I'm pretty sure that I was. We each have it equally as difficult for different reasons. You don't want to be back there. I don't want to be up there. Handshake. We both have hard jobs.
We both have hard jobs. That's true. At least you guys have.
I mean, we have a little bit harder, but we'll see everybody later. Thank you.
Goodbye.
Don't trust your business to just anyone. Overseasoned is presented by Over Easy Office. Powering your restaurant's back office has never been easier.